Do you know why most people fail at their goals? It's not because they lack talent or intelligence. It's because they can't stay consistent. Imagine if you could unlock a formula that forces you to stay on track, even when you don't feel like it. A consistency is the hidden bridge between dreams and achievement. Simon Sinek teaches us that success doesn't come from giant leaps, but from small, repeated steps. Today, I'll share the secret formula to force yourself into consistency. 3 powerful principles that can transform your habits, your mindset, and your future. Do you know why most people quit? Why they start strong, filled with energy, excitement, motivation, but somewhere along the way they slow down. They stumble, and eventually they stop. It's not because they weren't capable. It's not because they lacked resources, or even because they didn't have enough time. Most people quit because they forget. They forget why they began in the first place. Consistency dies when we lose sight of our why. Think about it. The alarm clock rings at 5 a.m., and you promised yourself you'd go for that run. The night before, you were excited, you were motivated, you even laid out your shoes by the door. But in that moment, when the alarm blares, your brain doesn't ask you, what's your goal? Your brain asks you, why does this matter? And if your answer is weak, if your reason is shallow, you hit snooze. You tell yourself, I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes next week. And next week becomes never. Consistency is not about discipline alone. Discipline is important, but discipline without meaning becomes punishment. Discipline without purpose becomes a burden, something you carry until you can't carry it anymore. But when you are connected to your why, discipline transforms into devotion. Suddenly, what looked like sacrifice feels like investment. What once felt like struggle now feels like progress. The question is not, what am I doing? The question is, why am I doing it? Because the deeper the reason, the stronger the commitment. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I met someone who wanted to quit smoking. They had tried everything, patches, gum, books, even hypnosis. Nothing worked. And when I asked them why they wanted to quit, they said, because it's unhealthy. Because I know it's bad for me. That's a perfectly logical reason, right? But logic doesn't inspire consistency. Logic doesn't move us to action when it's uncomfortable. So I asked again, why do you want to quit? And they said, well, because it's expensive and I could use the money for other things. Again, reasonable, but still not powerful enough. And then I asked, why else? And they thought for a while, and then they said, because my daughter hates the smell. She says my clothes smell bad. She doesn't want me to hug her after I've been smoking. And I don't want my daughter to grow up avoiding my hugs. Suddenly, the room got quiet. That was it. That was the why, not health, not money, love. A father's love for his daughter. That became his fuel. And within months, he quit. Not because he had more willpower than before, but because his reason was strong enough to carry him through the hardest days. When he wanted a cigarette, he didn't think about cancer, he thought about his daughter. That was the difference. This is what I mean when I say your why is the fuel. Consistency without why is like driving on an empty tank. You won't make it far. But when you are filled with purpose, when you remind yourself every day why it matters, you can keep going long after the excitement fades. And the truth is, excitement always fades. Motivation is temporary. Motivation is like a spark. It can ignite the fire, but it cannot keep the fire burning. What keeps the fire alive is meaning. What keeps the fire alive is the daily reminder of why you started in the first place. So let me ask you, what is your why? Why do you want to be consistent in your health, your career, your relationships? Don't give me the surface answer. Don't tell me, I want to lose weight. That's a result, not a reason. Don't tell me, I want to make more money. That's a goal, not a why. Dig deeper. Why do you want to lose weight? Is it so you can play with your kids without running out of breath? Is it so you can look in the mirror and feel proud, not ashamed? Is it so you can live long enough to walk your daughter down the aisle? That is your why. Why do you want to make more money? Is it so you can buy more things? Or is it so you can provide security for your family, freedom for your future, or the ability to give back and make a difference? That is your why. When you know your why, you no longer need to push yourself. You are pulled forward. Your why becomes a magnet. It draws you. It carries you. It makes consistency not a burden, but a privilege. And yet, so many people skip this step. They set goals, they make plans, they design routines, but they never pause to ask, why does this matter to me? And when the struggle comes, and it always comes, without a why, they fall. Think about the gym in January, it's packed. Everyone is excited, everyone is motivated, everyone has goals. By February, half are gone. By March, only a handful remain. Did they all lose the ability to work out? Did they all lose their membership cards? No, they lost their why. Their goal was get fit, but their why was shallow. And shallow whys cannot carry heavy loads. The ones who stay, the ones who remain consistent, they are the ones who go deeper. They say, I want to be here because my health is the foundation of everything I do. Because my energy determines how I show up for my family, my career, my life. Because when I am strong, I can serve more, give more, love more. That's the difference. That's the secret. The beauty of starting with why is that it gives meaning to the mundane. Every great achievement is built not on grand gestures, but on small, consistent actions. Actions that in the moment may feel boring, repetitive, unremarkable. Writing one page, making one phone call, practicing one skill. Day after day, without applause, without recognition, without why, those small steps feel like drudgery. With why, they feel like destiny. You see, the greatest among us are not the ones who do the extraordinary once, but the ones who do the ordinary consistently, fueled by an extraordinary why. That is what separates the dreamers from the achievers. So how do you remind yourself of your why? Because it's not enough to know it once. You must bring it to the surface every single day. Write it down, speak it aloud, put it on your wall, tell your friends, share it with your family, tattoo it on your heart. Every morning, before you face the world, remind yourself why you began. Every time you feel tired, remind yourself why it matters. Every time you want to quit, remind yourself who you're doing this for. Because when you forget your why, you will quit. But when you remember your why, you will rise. You will push. You will endure. You will stay consistent. We live in a world obsessed with goals. Everywhere you look, someone is telling you to set bigger goals, to dream higher, to push further. And don't get me wrong, goals are important. They give us a sense of direction. They point us towards something. But here's the problem with goals. They are outcomes, not processes. They are destinations, not journeys. And when we focus only on the outcome, only on the finish line, we often forget to build the path that will actually get us there. That's why so many people set goals, but so few people stay consistent. Goals alone don't create consistency. Systems do. Think about brushing your teeth. Most people don't set a goal to brush their teeth 700 times a year. Nobody writes that down on a vision board. Nobody counts how many times they did it last week. And yet, we all do it twice a day, every single day. Why? Because brushing your teeth isn't a goal, it's a system. It's part of your identity. It's automatic. You don't celebrate it. You don't feel the need to reward yourself for it. You don't question it. You just do it because it's who you are. And that is the difference between goals and systems. Goals require motivation. Systems rely on habit. Goals live in the future. Systems live in the present. Goals create pressure. Systems create momentum. The danger with goals is that they can set us up for failure before we even begin. How many times have you set a big, exciting goal? You were going to lose 30 pounds, write a book, start a business. And for the first few days, maybe even the first few weeks, you felt unstoppable. But then life happened. You got tired. You got distracted. Progress was slower than you expected. And suddenly, that goal, that shining destination, started to feel further and further away. And what happens when the goal feels out of reach? We quit. We tell ourselves, maybe next year. And the cycle repeats. Systems, on the other hand, don't demand perfection. They only demand repetition. You don't need to run a marathon tomorrow. You just need to lace up your shoes today. You don't need to write an entire book in a week. You just need to write a page. You don't need to build a multi-million-dollar business in 6 months. You just need to make one call, send one email, improve one product. A system breaks down the overwhelming into the manageable. A system turns the impossible into the inevitable. I once spoke to a young man who wanted to become a musician. His goal was to write an album, a full album of songs, within a year. Ambitious, right? But guess what? After 3 months, he hadn't written a single song. He was paralyzed by the size of the goal. Every time he sat down to write, he thought, This has to be perfect. This has to be good enough to be on the album. And that pressure crushed his creativity. So I asked him, what if you let go of the goal, just for now, and focused on a system? What if, instead of trying to write an album, you simply wrote one verse every single day? Not a song, not a masterpiece, just one verse. He agreed. At first it felt small, almost trivial. But verse after verse, day after day, something changed. Within 6 months, he had a notebook full of ideas, carousels, hooks. And from that system emerged his first album. The goal didn't get him there. The system did. The power of systems is that they shift your identity. When you set a goal, you are chasing an outcome. But when you build a system, you become the kind of person who does the work consistently. If your goal is to run a marathon, you might quit once the marathon is done. But if you build a system of running 3 times a week, you don't just run one marathon. You become a runner. If your goal is to lose 20 pounds, you might go back to old habits once you hit the number. But if you build a system of healthy eating and regular movement, you don't just lose weight. You become someone who lives a healthy lifestyle. Systems are not about achieving something once. They are about becoming someone new forever. And that's why systems outlast goals. Because goals are temporary, but identity is permanent. Goals are fragile, but systems are resilient. Goals require motivation to keep chasing. Systems require only commitment to keep showing up. Motivation fades, but systems endure. Think of anyone who has achieved greatness: athletes, artists, entrepreneurs. Yes, they had goals. But more importantly, they had systems. Michael Jordan didn't become the greatest basketball player in the world because his goal was to win championships. He became the greatest because he had a system of practice, discipline, and training every single day, regardless of how he felt. Steve Jobs didn't build Apple because his goal was to be rich. He built Apple because he had a system of relentless innovation, of constantly questioning, refining, improving. Greatness doesn't come from chasing goals. It comes from living systems. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you relying on goals, or are you building systems? Are you waiting for motivation, or are you designing habits that make motivation irrelevant? Because when you live by systems, consistency becomes automatic. It stops being a struggle. It stops being a negotiation. It simply becomes who you are. And when consistency becomes who you are, success is no longer a question of if. It's only a question of when. But let me be clear. Building systems is not glamorous. Systems are boring. Systems are repetitive. Systems are the small, daily actions that no one claps for, no one celebrates, no one even notices. That's why so many people abandon systems and chase goals instead. They want the glory, the excitement, the instant gratification. But the truth is, the people who win are not the ones who seek glory. They are the ones who are willing to do the boring work consistently, day after day. They are the ones who embrace the system, even when no one is watching, even when no one is cheering. That is what separates the consistent from the inconsistent. That is what separates the average from the extraordinary. I remember talking to an author who wrote more than 20 best-selling books. And I asked him, how do you do it? How do you write so many books? What's your secret? And he said, I don't set out to write books. I set out to write 2 pages a day. That's it. 2 pages. Every single day. Some days those pages are terrible. Some days they're brilliant. But it doesn't matter, because 2 pages a day adds up. And eventually, I have a book. That's the power of systems. He didn't rely on bursts of inspiration. He didn't wait for the perfect idea. He simply followed his system. And that system produced results again and again. Now, let's talk about you. What is the system you can build today? Don't overcomplicate it. Don't make it too big. Start small. If your goal is to get fit, build a system of moving your body for just 10 minutes a day. If your goal is to save money, build a system of saving a small percentage of every paycheck. If your goal is to read more, build a system of reading 5 pages before bed. These small systems may seem insignificant, but over time, they compound. They build momentum, and momentum is everything. Momentum is what carries you through the days when you don't feel like it. Momentum is what transforms effort into habit and habit into identity. And here's the beautiful part: when you focus on the system, the goal takes care of itself. You don't need to obsess over the finish line. You don't need to constantly measure how far you have left to go. You just need to follow the system, and the results will come. If you exercise consistently, you will get fit. If you save consistently, you will build wealth. If you create consistently, you will produce great work. The outcome is inevitable when the system is reliable. So stop chasing goals and start building systems. Stop asking yourself, what do I want to achieve? And start asking, who do I want to become? Because when you live by systems, success is no longer something you chase. It's something you attract. It's something you embody. It becomes part of who you are. And that is the ultimate consistency, not doing something once, not doing something for a season, but becoming the kind of person who does it for a lifetime. We rise higher when others are watching. Share your commitments, join a community, or find a partner who will hold you to your word. Accountability transforms consistency from a lonely battle into a shared mission. When we speak of accountability, we are not just talking about rules or obligations, we are touching the very essence of human behavior. Human beings are social creatures. From the very beginning of time, tribes and groups thrived because they leaned on each other, shared responsibilities, and made sure that each individual was not only thinking of themselves, but of the collective good. Accountability is deeply ingrained in our DNA. Left entirely to ourselves, we might fall prey to procrastination, self-deception, or the subtle whispers of excuses that justify why we couldn't do what we promised. But when another person is aware of our commitment, when another set of eyes and ears is waiting for us to show up, the game changes entirely. Suddenly, it is not only about our willpower, but about trust, credibility, and respect. Consistency without accountability can feel like pushing a boulder up a hill all alone. Some days you make progress, other days you slide backward, and sometimes you are tempted to give up completely. But with accountability, it is as though someone stands beside you, placing their hand on the boulder, urging you forward, reminding you that you can do it, and more importantly, expecting you to do it. Expectations have a strange way of drawing strength out of us. We might tolerate disappointing ourselves, but the thought of disappointing someone who believes in us, someone who is rooting for us, is much harder to accept. This is why accountability is not a weakness. It is a weapon. It is a strategy that acknowledges the natural human tendency to falter alone and leverages the power of community to rise above it. Think of athletes. The world's top performers are not necessarily more disciplined than the rest of us. Many of them openly admit that they don't wake up every day feeling like training, dieting, or practicing. But what they do have are coaches, teams, and fans who hold them accountable. When a player knows that their teammates are counting on them, when they know that skipping practice means letting the group down, they find a new layer of motivation. Accountability builds an environment where excuses shrink and execution grows. It removes the option of hiding. Accountability also thrives on transparency. When you declare your intentions publicly, when you say, I will run 5 miles every day, or I will publish 1 article every week, you step into the realm of being seen. And when you are seen, you are measured. That measurement is not always comfortable, but it is always powerful. Because the truth is, we often give ourselves far too much room to justify failure in silence. Alone, we might say, I'll start tomorrow, or I'll do it later, and no one will argue with us. But when someone else is waiting, when someone else asks, did you follow through? Those excuses sound emptier. Accountability is like shining a light in the corners where excuses hide. It makes the invisible visible. Now, accountability does not have to be harsh or judgmental. In fact, the most effective form of accountability is rooted in encouragement and support, not punishment. It is not about someone policing your life, but about someone partnering with you in your mission. It's about creating a shared bond where both people care about each other's growth. Imagine 2 friends who agree to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym together. On days when one feels tired, the other provides the nudge. Over time, the act becomes a rhythm, a ritual. What started as accountability becomes identity. You begin to see yourself as the type of person who shows up, not just because you have to, but because it's who you are. That transformation is where consistency becomes sustainable. At the core of accountability is vulnerability. To ask someone to hold you accountable requires admitting that you cannot do it alone. And that admission takes humility. But humility is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the understanding that we are not designed to operate in isolation. Even the strongest leaders in history relied on accountability. Kings had advisors. Presidents had cabinets. Entrepreneurs had boards. Every great achiever had someone to answer to. Why? Because unchecked freedom without accountability often leads to carelessness, arrogance, or stagnation. Accountability, on the other hand, sharpens focus. It keeps ambitions aligned with actions. One of the most underestimated aspects of accountability is how it creates momentum. Imagine writing down a commitment in private versus declaring it in front of 10 people. The weight of your words changes dramatically. Suddenly, there's energy behind it. Those 10 people become a mirror reflecting back the image of who you said you would be. And every time you show up, every time you honor your word, that reflection grows stronger. You start to believe in yourself more, not only because of your actions, but because others are witnessing your integrity in real time. This cycle, declare, act, be seen, be believed, creates a momentum that is nearly impossible to stop. When accountability is woven into your life, even small actions feel significant. A message to your accountability partner saying, "I did my reading today," or "I completed my workout," may seem minor, but it builds an invisible wall of consistency brick by brick. Over time, those bricks form a fortress of discipline that protects you even on your weakest days. You may not feel like moving forward, but accountability reminds you that you are part of something bigger than your feelings. Feelings are temporary. Commitments are lasting. Accountability anchors you to the latter. It is also important to note that accountability works best when it is mutual. Instead of only one person holding the other responsible, both parties agree to walk the journey together. This reciprocity strengthens the bond. It creates a shared mission where both individuals rise together. Think of accountability partners as climbing ropes. When one slips, the other secures the line. Together, they ascend higher than they ever could alone. In this way, accountability is not only about discipline, but about belonging. We are wired to want to belong, and when our belonging is tied to growth and consistency, extraordinary things happen. Technology has also amplified the power of accountability in today's world. With social media, fitness apps, and online communities, it has become easier than ever to share commitments and track progress publicly. While this exposure can sometimes feel daunting, it can also be a powerful motivator. Posting your progress, joining a group challenge, or engaging in digital accountability systems can transform abstract goals into tangible daily habits. Even strangers across the world can hold us to a higher standard because once we put our word out there, we instinctively want to protect it. But accountability is not only about external forces, it also reshapes your internal dialogue. Over time, when you practice accountability consistently, you develop an inner voice that asks, "Am I being true to my word? Am I living in integrity with what I declared?" That internal accountability is perhaps the highest form because it means you no longer need constant external pressure. The outside accountability plants the seed, but the internal accountability nurtures it into a self-sustaining tree. You become the type of person who shows up even when no one is watching, because you know that ultimately you are always watching yourself. The beauty of accountability is that it closes the gap between intention and action. Most people don't fail because they lack dreams. They fail because they lack follow through. Accountability bridges that gap. It transforms lofty intentions into measurable behaviors. And the more you engage with accountability, the more your actions align with your values. This alignment is what breeds trust. Not only trust from others, but trust in yourself. When you can look in the mirror and say, "I do what I say I'll do," you unlock a level of self-respect that no external achievement can give. Accountability also teaches resilience. No one is perfect. You will miss days. You will stumble. You will break commitments. But accountability ensures that you don't stay down. When you admit to your partner or community that you failed, something powerful happens. You strip failure of its shame. Instead of hiding it, you expose it. And once exposed, failure loses its grip. Your accountability partner reminds you that failure is not final, that one setback does not erase the journey. In this way, accountability not only fuels consistency, but sustains it through the inevitable ups and downs of life. Ultimately, accountability is an act of love, love for yourself and love for others. It says, "I value my word enough to protect it, and I value you enough to let you into my journey." When we hold each other accountable, we create bonds of trust, respect, and shared growth. We rise higher because we rise together, Consistency becomes less of a lonely battle and more of a shared mission, a collective climb where every step forward is multiplied by the support of others. Accountability is not about chains that restrict you. It is about wings that lift you. It gives structure to freedom, direction to ambition, and strength to consistency. When you embrace it fully, you realize that the journey of growth was never meant to be walked alone. Consistency is not about willpower. It's about designing a life that pulls you forward. Simon Sinek reminds us, when you live with purpose, build systems, and surround yourself with accountability, consistency stops being a struggle. It becomes who you are. The question is, are you ready to step into that version of yourself?